During the pandemic housing boom, a lot of conventional wisdom got thrown out the window, and things that used to be true no longer were. There were hardly any new homes available to buy, and if there were, buyers had no input on the choice of options and were forced to bid against each other for the right to sign the contract. This low builder inventory put upward price pressure on the resale market. And when you combine that with what seemed like an endless flow of buyers with lots of cash, prices took off like a rocket ship. Now we are seeing signs of a softening market, and as this plays out, buyers will have more choices. So if you stick around for this video, I'm going to go over the major pros and cons of buying new construction versus resale in the post-pandemic housing market. Now, one of the most obvious advantages of buying new construction is that it's going to be new. It will have a contemporary design, better insulation, energy-efficient windows, and energy-efficient appliances. A resale home, on the other hand, can be anything from a year old to 50 years old. And the older it is, the more dated that design will be. Some older homes may have been updated, but you'll probably want to check out who did the remodeling and whether the proper permits were pulled. Another thing to remember is that anything built before 1980 could have asbestos in the insulation and lead in the paint, not to mention things like cast iron sewer lines. Back in the 50s and 60s, they thought cast iron was indestructible. We've since found out that it usually lasts about 50 years. So if you're considering a home in a mid-century neighborhood that still has the original plumbing, you're probably looking at needing to replace it at some point. Now, on the other side of this is these older homes are usually going to be closer to the downtown area. If you look at areas just north of downtown Austin, like Hyde Park, Rosedale, Allendale, Crestview, you will find some remodels that have been tastefully done. If you find a house that hasn't been remodeled yet, then of course you would be able to customize it to your tastes. Another downside of these older homes, though, is they tend to be much smaller than most of the new construction. Historically, houses have gotten bigger over time. A house built in the 40s might be less than 1,000 square feet, but most new construction homes today are at least 2,000. The older homes will be smaller, but the lots tend to be much bigger, which provide options like additions or even an ADU. The new construction homes are usually going to be further out from the urban core, and many of the larger developments will have amenities like swimming pools, hiking trails, and playgrounds, along with brand new schools. The trade-off, of course, is that a portion of your taxes are going to go to pay for all of this. Now, one of the most obvious things we haven't talked about yet is that a new home is going to have a warranty. At minimum, it will have a 10-year structural and foundation warranty, and a lot of builders extend it to cover everything in the house, including the appliances, for at least the first year or two. On a resale home, you can do an inspection and purchase a home warranty that will cover almost everything in the home for the first couple of years. But for the most part, if anything needs to be repaired on a resale home, you are going to have to pay for it. On a resale home, once the buyer and seller come to an agreement, there is typically an option period. A home inspector will provide the buyer with a report detailing any areas of concern. The buyer and the seller will then negotiate whether the seller is going to fix anything that showed up on the report or offer a price concession to cover the cost of the repairs. The other option is the buyer accepts it as is. Regardless of whatever it is they agree to, after the option period, the transaction moves towards closing. If there's a loan involved, the lender will order an appraisal and an underwriting department will work towards the final approval. This could be as quick as a couple of weeks, but usually is in that 30 to 40 day time frame. Once the loan is funded, the buyer and seller will close on the transaction and the buyer can move in. Sometimes the seller will get a leaseback period where they live in the house after the closing. This was much more common during the pandemic housing boom, when sellers got used to asking for just about anything. But if it does happen, both parties would have to agree to it. So not counting the leaseback period, you're looking at 30 to 60 days from when the contract is executed until the buyer moves in. Of course, if there is no loan involved and the buyer is paying cash, that time frame could be condensed to as little as 7 to 10 days. All told, if you're buying a resale home, you're looking at a delay of 1 to 8 weeks before you can move in. If you're buying new construction, though, that delay can extend for months, unless you're buying an inventory home, which is one that's already built and ready for a quick move-in. A quick recap of what it's been like to buy new construction during the last few years. First, there were virtually no inventory homes available. The only time that happened was when the original buyer couldn't close. And since the builder had a long list of alternate buyers, they could usually have it under contract with the new buyer within a day or two. It was also common for the builders to sign the sales contract while the house was still in construction. Usually it was after the house reached the foundation stage, but some of the smaller builders signed contracts even before that. This meant there was a 6 to 9 month period before the buyer could move in. In some cases, it was over a year. Rapid price appreciation, supply chain issues, and increasing lumber costs put pressure on these builders, especially the ones who didn't have escalation clauses. There are stories of builders terminating contracts, and all of this demonstrates how the market favored the builder. They could ask for just about anything, and there was a long line of buyers willing to pay more than list price no matter what the terms were. Fast forward to today, and these builders have a bit of a risk issue. There are so many houses still under construction that they can't close on yet. And while these houses are being built, mortgage rates are shooting up. The math goes like this. To keep the payment the same, for every percentage point increase in the mortgage rate, the dollar amount of the loan would need to be reduced by 10%. And with 2 to 3% mortgage rate difference between now and the first of the year, some of those houses would need to be reduced 20 to 30% to keep the payment the same. Now, there are plenty of buyers out there who can't afford this increase in monthly payment, but there are others who can't, which means there will be a percentage of those under construction homes that won't close with the original buyer. Now, if you complicate this with a decrease in the number of new buyers, those builders could have a sizable amount of inventory homes over the next few months. This is one area where the pandemic housing boom rewrote the rules. It used to be that new construction provided sort of a cap on appreciation. If there was a development of, say, 2,000 homes that would be built in phases over several years, if someone bought in phase 1 and decided to sell 2 or 3 years after moving in, they were sometimes challenged to get what they paid for the house, let alone any kind of appreciation, because a buyer could walk into the model home and buy a brand new one for about the same amount of money. During the pandemic, though, those new construction homes weren't available. If a buyer wanted one, they had to go on a wait list and probably would need to bid against other buyers, which meant they would need to pay more than list price to buy the new construction home. The resale homes became attractive because you could move in quicker, but there was a limited supply of them. Too many buyers, not enough homes, sent prices way up. Now that things are cooling down, builders are beginning to offer incentives like discounts and promotional interest rates. And like we talked about in a previous section, if a large number of those under construction homes become inventory homes, we could see further price reductions. Now, on the resale side, we have seen increases in the number of new listings and increase in the number of price reductions on the current listings. But if people are going to continue to relocate to Austin, and there is still a large pool of buyers out there who want to buy, but are just waiting for the right opportunity, then we're probably not going to see significant price decreases. But let's say that we do. Which of the two is better insulated from price volatility? New construction or resale? My opinion is that new construction and resale homes close to the new construction have the highest risk of stagnant or even negative appreciation. If a builder has an oversupply of inventory homes, that will put downward pressure on pricing, and that will have a trickle-down effect on houses in the earlier phases of the same development, and even houses just outside of the development. If you could buy a brand new home for $500,000, why would you pay $600,000 for a 2, 3, or 10-year-old home in the same general area? Now, if you're in a popular area with good schools, close to work, or other amenities, and there is limited new construction in the area, I would forecast that you would have a higher likelihood of seeing continued appreciation growth, provided that area continues to be sought after. Consider this example. Before the pandemic, everybody wanted to live close to downtown to experience that urban living. After the lockdowns and work from home became the norm, the demand shifted to the suburbs. If the daily commute was no longer a concern, it didn't matter how far away from the urban core someone lived. Will that continue, or will demand shift back to the urban centers? I get emails, texts, and phone calls almost every day from people who are thinking about buying or selling real estate here in the Austin area, and I would love to help you out too. If you like this video, you should check out this other one that I did. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel and hit that notification bell. All of my contact information is in the video description, so don't be shy. Let's make your real estate dreams come true.